go ahead and hit record. Thank you all so much for joining us. I am so excited that you're here. I have a very special guest, Joelee Godfrey, who is I'm just so excited to have her speak with us, share her information about the beautiful work that she's doing here in our community. But I just wanted to just invite you to just grab a cup of tea if you haven't already, or any beverage that feels right to you. I just wanted to let you know that we've been meeting monthly for 2 years now, and this is just an incredible space. People come pop in and join us, and the reason why I created this space was because it was really for selfish reasons. I really wanted to create a space to just invite people to talk about that. Thing that seems so hard to talk about, death, and also it was just a way for me to process my own grief and kind of navigating my journey as I begin to lean in a little closer about that conversation about death. And so I have a very good friend of mine. I think, gosh, it's been my son's 30. So her name was Mary Kay, and she gave me a beautiful coffee cup that I normally drink tea with you guys every day, but it is sitting on the counter in the kitchen. So today it will just be a glass of water with you all. But this is kind of in honor of Mary Kay. She died of breast cancer at the age of 42, and she introduced me to tea as well as some other beautiful people in my life. So sharing a cup of tea and having a conversation is meaningful for me. So I'm just so grateful that you guys have all decided to join. So I wanted to introduce you to Joelee. She is a licensed funeral director and mortician, and she works at Allsip and Persons Funeral Chapel in Nampa, Idaho. But she has a ton of experience and knowledge, and I just can't wait for you to meet her. So, Joelee, I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. Do you think maybe you could share a little bit about yourself so that we can get to know you? And then we'll just have some questions and answers and see where the conversation goes. Thank you so much for
Sure.
joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful. Um, as a friend of mine, you know how important it is for me to talk about um, my line of work, that it's not the easiest. So I appreciate you so much asking me to come and talk. So I really knew that I was supposed to be in some type of death care um, at a very, very young age, and not even knowing really what it meant, but knowing that I was okay around death. And so I saw my first autopsy at the morgue when I was 14, which I found very, very interesting. We had a career day. My mom had to sign the paperwork, and I was able to go down and see it. And so I knew from a very, very young age that I wanted to be a funeral director. I started out at Summers Funeral Home in downtown Boise, and from there, I've managed a few funeral homes, and now I'm over at Allsip in Persons, where I am not a manager, and I did not want that. I don't want that job anymore. I just want to serve others, help people, and meet with families, and that's really what I want to focus on. And I have been married for 33 years. I have 6 beautiful children and almost 6 grandbabies, one on the way. And yeah, that's where I come from. That's my background.
Thanks so much, Jolie. I remember the first time that I met you, it was we were chatting in just a little room off of the one of the rooms at the funeral chapel, and I remember just feeling so deeply connected to you because I felt like, oh my gosh, you're in death work, you're doing this work, and you created an opportunity to ask the questions that I was afraid to ask. Hadn't had a lot of experience in a funeral home myself, except for, going to services for family members and friends, but that you actually made me fall in love with the work that you do because as you guys will get to know Jolie, this is more than a job. This is something that she tenderly takes care of our loved ones after they pass. And so, Jolie, first I wanted to just maybe ask you, what do you think is like your favorite part of your job? What is your favorite part of the type of work that you do?
Well, I want to split it up into two sections. So,
Okay.
um, my favorite part as a mortician is reconstruction and preparing someone to be um, viewed by their loved one, because I believe that a viewing helps with well, um, processing death. And if I can make it softer than the last time they saw them, perhaps if they were there or they saw a traumatic death, or perhaps they found a body, or something, is that I want to make it just a little softer. My goal is to, when they walk in the room to view their loved one, that they see them as being okay, as being peaceful, being asleep, being at rest. And so for me, as the mortician me, that's my favorite part, is um, being in the prep room and doing my work. But um, I also do talk when I'm in the prep room with them, and, "Hey, your mom's coming, you need to look good," or I talk to the ladies, "We're gonna fix your eyebrows, don't worry," because I know for me, I wanna make sure that it's, you know, um, that the ladies go out without chin hair, okay? And they have good eyebrows. That's important, right? And that the gentlemen go out and their mustache is trimmed, or their goatee looks good, and those kind of things. Those things are so important, because so that's my favorite part there. My favorite part as a funeral director is connecting with the family and listening intently on what they're saying, not only to me, but in conversation with the other people if they're there with their family, because I learn so much stuff about their loved one just by listening to the conversations that they're having with each other. Favorite colors, favorite flowers, favorite memories. If I can pick up on those things and just take that, maybe I hear somebody say, "Oh yeah, well, grandma's favorite flower was the red Gerber daisy," is that when they show up at the service, or maybe they just show up to have a viewing, that there's a red Gerber daisy there, that I took the time to listen, and make that connection, and to make what they're thinking a service should look like, and I can bring that to life. I can listen and bring their vision of celebration to life. So,
Okay, so I'm already crying. Thank you for that. That is beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. Um, I think that, mm, okay, I'm just gonna start crying. So let's too early for that. So thank
okay,
you.
don't make me cry, Christine.
I think about, that's one of the, you know, I'm worried about my chin hairs.
I got you, girl. I got you.
Thank you. And someone had said to me at our last Living with Death group, or one of the meetings that I was doing, and someone had said, when we are in that active dying phase, the human, like my human wants to be concerned about the chin hairs and, my eyebrows and all of that. But when we're at least what it's been described to me is when our physical body is diminishing, our spiritual body is expanding, and all of that humanness and my ego is no longer going to really be important. But my human wants, that to be taken care of. And so it's really nice to know that there is someone there that is um, being mindful of, that honoring of that person. So that's beautiful. Thank you. I
Absolutely.
don't know, every time I get around you, I cry. So, one of the things that I think about too, like, thank you for clarifying that too about, what is the difference between a mortician and a funeral director? So I didn't know what that was. And so thank you for clarifying that. Um, one of the questions that I think about a lot, and you kind of touched on it, is what would be an example of maybe one of the more memorable things that you've experienced in your line of work? Maybe at a service, or, part of your job, as I understand, is, going to assume care after someone has passed away. You are there present, to bring them to the funeral home. So what would be some of the memorable things that kind of stick out for you in your career of caring for people at that very important stage in our life?
Well, I'll share 2 things because I have to share the first one that it comes to my head because it's a funny one, and, I think that we have to humanize ourselves, right? And so, when you start taking care of families and you have a really good connection, those families, you become friends and you talk to each other outside of the funeral home because usually when people show up to the funeral home, it's you cry and nobody wants to be there, right? It's not really a fun place to come to a funeral home. But I meet a lot of so many wonderful people, and there are those few that just you can connect with right away. And so I did this, and then her mother was going through hospice and transitioning, and I said, Lori, you just call me when don't worry about it. I'll be there. I'll come and get mom, no problem. Just call me. So she calls me and she's crying and she said, Joe, mom's gone. I just know. I went in there. Now I'm afraid. I don't know. I'm afraid she's gone. I'm like, that's okay. No problem, Lori. What we'll do is I'll come over, okay? And she goes, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And I said, well, you need to call hospice. She goes, I don't want to call them until you get here. I said, okay, that's fine. So this is about 3 o'clock in the morning. I drive to her house and her husband answers the door, Zach, and he comes in and I said, yeah, Lori called. And he goes, yeah, well, um, mom mom passed away. I said, okay, well, and they said, well, we want to spend some time with her. I said, that's fine. I'll go in and make sure that she looks good and get her ready for if the kids want to come and see her and stuff because I don't feel like swooping somebody up right away is necessary, right? So I go in there and I'm like, oh, Helen, gosh, let me get you ready. And this is what she does. And she starts. So I come out. I said, well, Lori, oh, what do we need to do? I said, I'm going to go home and mom's not ready. She hasn't graduated yet. She's like, what? So that was one of my most memorable, funny moments that I had as a funeral director. Um, my other one
It's
of
the
my
stuff that movies are made of.
exactly, exactly. Yeah, it was, we all had a really good laugh, and it didn't make it so scary when mom did go, right? It didn't make it so scary, um, and she called hospice first this time, but made that part okay. So, yeah. The next one that, was memorable is I had a gentleman, husband and wife. They had been married for 73 years. I had gotten we had gotten a call out for hospice, that the gentleman had passed away. And so we went to the home and we picked him up, and um, we spoke with his wife and told her how terribly sorry we were and that we'd be calling her. And she said, okay, thank you so much. And we got a call an hour later that she had passed in their bed. And so people ask, is it true that people do pass with a broken heart? And I can clearly say that yes, um, she passed away within an hour of him without any signs of knowing that. She went into the bedroom and laid down to rest, and we came back and picked her up. So um, that was another memorable moment in being out on a first call. So
Wow. Wow. Those are powerful. I think about how closely, people that have been married for so long, how I don't feel like it's a coincidence that their passings seem so close together. And yeah, I think you see that
mhm.
more and more. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Powerful. So I really want this time also to be about you guys. So if you have questions, raise your hand and or put them in the chat. This is really just your opportunity to ask Jolie all the questions that you would love to ask a funeral director. Um, Julie, one of the things that we talk about a lot, especially just, in our circle of being end of life doulas, because almost everyone on this call is a doula. And Althea, before I say anything more, Althea and Maggie, I need you two to connect. So Althea is home, is what you see, and she is in Atlanta. Yes, I know. And I need for you both to connect because I think that you should um I think you definitely should connect. Althea does some amazing work for after death and does memorials and creates obituaries. And just watching her on LinkedIn, I'm just giving you a shout out, Althea, because I just magically found her on LinkedIn and she's doing some beautiful work. So Maggie, connect with Althea, please. And one of the things, Jolie, too, what we talk about a lot of, before someone passes, what are the steps? Like we talk about this a lot, like planning for, the journey that we're all going to take, right? And so, we were talking about beforehand about what would be the most important thing to share with people. You mentioned wishes. What would you recommend as people are kind of planning and preparing for this journey, just to make the landing a little softer? What would you recommend? What would you say to people that are kind of wanting to kind of explore how to really support their loved one or even for themselves?
So, one of the and this is from personal experience, and also being in this business and meeting with families daily. Definitely let somebody know what your wishes are, or if you don't want to tell them, write it down and tell them where your wishes are. If it's hard for you to talk about, e- the disposition, burial or cremation. Whether that's acclimation or if it's donation of your body or all of those, whatever it is, and however you want it, write it down, because otherwise you got, your family doing rock, paper, scissors on who's going to, if we want burial or we want cremation, and then there's, a huge cost difference. And when you meet with families, they they're they're thinking emotionally, and I always tell people I'm the most frugal funeral director that you'll find. My husband said, "Don't own a funeral. We can't own a funeral home. We'll go broke because you give it away all for free." And I know I can't do that, but I would, right? and so, but the biggest thing is that if you share that with somebody, they don't have to make the decision that's going to be hard to make and then wonder for the rest of their life if they made the right decision and maybe carry guilt because they didn't. And so, and I see that a lot. And then I see a lot of times that there's this pull of I can only honor my loved one if I buy them you know, the $1,000 urn when that's, you can buy one for 3.95, or you can take the coffee can that dad drank coffee out of. And so it, and so I did that is so important for the kids to know that. So that's one of them.
Thank you. I remember when my dad passed away, my mom wasn't able to go to the funeral home because she had her own health issues, and so we were at the funeral home, and my dad loved the Raiders, and so we were at the funeral home, and there was like this shiny black casket that was, like, "Mom, it's black and silver. I think Dad would really," and she's like, "No, no." Just reeling us back in, but I'd never been to a funeral home before, and it was really just like, Dad would love this. And my mom's like, he's fine. And so we put these little Raiders decals or whatever on his casket, but I do think that, sometimes we can, if our wishes aren't known, if my dad would have helped us make those decisions. The one thing we did know is that he wanted to be at um, the veteran cemetery, and that's one thing that we did know, and that's one of the things too, Jolie, that I just love about Alsip is the recognition and the honoring of the veterans when they pass. I think that is, I don't know if all funeral homes do that or funeral chapels, but I do love that about All Sick Persons because it's just so important to honor the veterans and knowing that they have that they have that option. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Yeah, perfect. Hey, Suze, I'm gonna unmute you. Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you, Christine, for providing this space and for Jolie for being here. It's timely because I actually just set up a meeting for next week with a local funeral home to talk a little bit about some of the doula work that starting to do. And so one of the questions would be, what are some good ways to engage with funeral homes, and how are you doing anything with doulas in your current work? Um, Also, the chin hairs are, I was just gonna go back to the chin hairs are a good thing too. My mom died in March, and
Uh-huh.
that was like the electric razor, and it was like the twice a week, that was the big thing. And so of our friend group, we're all like, okay, we're all about the same. I mean, we could all be going at the same time, but we got to have like the younger people or someone that's gonna be on chin hair duty. So we've got that covered. Uh,
Great.
but one of the other things too is, talking about people coming in, and one of the areas that we're really trying to focus on is that planning ahead. Do you see any trends, or do you feel that people are kind of starting to make plans ahead of time? Do you think that there's a good percentage of people that you see, not just when somebody gets that terminal diagnosis or they're getting, down to their last time with us, but, even like 10 years ahead. Okay, let's go to, this is where we live, this is where we think our services might be. Do you do any of that planning, or do you see that happening?
Yes, we get a lot of phone calls for it, and then so our we have what we call pre-arrangement counselors, family counselors that will go out and do that. A lot of the a lot of the home health care or senior centers, things like that will bring those things up and provide that information. Um, and then a lot of times mailers will come out. So I think that we're seeing an increase in some pre-planning for the baby boomers getting ready for this, people 65 and older usually. Usually we don't see, maybe we'll see somebody in their 50s, 40s or 50s come in. But usually it's folks that are getting to that retirement, Medicare age, um,
Interestingly, my parents both, I mean, they told us for years that they, they had gone, they live not too far from a particular cemetery, and they were building these new mausoleums, and so they would always just joke, we bought our drawers, you're all set. When we
Right.
go, everything is all set. And so, as my mom was going through her dementia journey, as we started to talk about things, and the funeral home that we knew that they would be wanting to use, my dad said, well, no, I mean, we've never talked to them. We don't have any, they really didn't, other than having the drawer, they didn't
Cemetery,
really
yeah.
have anything. But in their mind, it was all set. You just need to make one call. Everything is done. And that really wasn't the case. So it was just interesting what they thought that meant versus what it actually
Actually,
meant
that's
in the
pretty
moment.
common. That's actually
Yeah.
very, very common in um, that generation. So I'm going to say generationally, anybody that's over the age of 80 on up, if they got a plot at a cemetery, right? At that time, a lot of times they were connected, and the funeral director and the cemetery, they were intertwined. So just call Bill and he'll come and pick us up and take us over there and put us in the drawer and it's all set. And and that's what's, because traditionally way back when, that's how it kind of worked. But that's not really how that works now, right? Even the last 40 years, it really hasn't worked that way. But you see that traditionally happening. I still see it a lot. Well, mom called and said that they had everything ready. Well, they did buy the plot at the cemetery, but they haven't bought the casket or anything else. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and even my dad, I think he had a little bit of, financial sticker shock, I guess, when, because thinking what they had paid for that and what it all, they did a payment plan, and, my mom was 82, my dad is 89. So they're right in that age group of what you're saying. So it's just, interesting, when, and I think educational for me as we go out and are talking to some people and trying to really determine what kind of plans they have, that what they think are plans are not necessarily plans to the extent that they think they have. So
right. And,
yeah,
and explaining to them the difference between a pre-arrangement and uh,
yeah,
a prepaid funeral arrangement at a facility are two different things, and both are wonderful, but they're two
yeah,
different things. And if if you're going to be going out and talking to funeral homes and things like that and asking them, um, I would I would encourage you to get with someone is who can, well, I don't want to say who can write, but it is, you have to, I know for the state of Idaho, you have to be licensed to write a pre-plan. So, and to accept money, because here we don't like to put it into like a trust, because it ends up being, it can be ugly. So a third party holds it like a life insurance. But if you can connect with an uh, insurance agent that writes pre-plans, um, I would encourage you to do that, because then you can say to your folks, you can say, here's what we have, or these are your options. This is what we encourage you to do. If you want to do that, here's a person that can help you walk through it. So I encourage you to find that person to to do that, because usually most of funeral homes have their own.
okay,
Um,
yeah, that's helpful.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. you know, the funeral planning side is not where I'm going. I just, just having the conversation about whether they actually have it done, and kind of iterating the fact that their wishes should be known, and, that they
Mhm.
can do this further ahead than they think. And then certainly having the funeral directors and insurance companies perhaps be part of that. But yeah, that's helpful.
Yeah, no, and just being able to know, and they have, the booklets you can give people too, and a
Yeah.
lot of times they'll just give them to you free if you ask for them, just because, and
Okay.
they're great because they can just write them down and leave them at home. I'm always giving out those just because I really doesn't matter to me if you come back with it or not. If you have it somewhere and have the information in it,
Right.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so
Yeah. Helps guide the discussion and gets people
absolutely.
thinking about it. Yeah. Helpful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Suze. And Maggie, you have your hand up. Good to see you.
The joke at the funeral home is it's better to be seen than to be viewed. Um,
Absolutely.
I've got several things. First of all, you have a bad reputation. Did you know that? You have a bad reputation. Hospice has a bad reputation. Death has a bad reputation. Health proxy has a bad reputation. And so part of our job is to educate and maybe change that.
Mhm.
You're right there with the used sales car salesman, in regard to the being vulnerable, being taken advantage of, and the general public. And I say you, that is global you, certainly not you.
Oh,
Your
I
heart, I feel
understand.
your
Yes.
heart, and you and I probably have a lot more in common. I would be broke too, so I get it. Um, so, second thing, Suzanne has taught us that most funeral homes really do have the pine box. And I had heard that it was mandatory, that you had to have one. Do most have them? Is it something that you just don't want to tell us about, meaning general? Or is it something we have to ask them? They have to order because we're insistent on having a pine box. What's the story with that?
Well, so I think that that's a misconception from a lot of people. A pine box is more expensive than the cheapest casket we can get you. So if you want a cheap casket, you say, I want the value line casket. Um, and you want to basically you want a cloth covered cremation casket is what you want. Um, we can bury those. I don't recommend it for anybody who's over 300 pounds because you'll fall out of the bottom of it. But we can get them. The other ones are like a 22 gauge straw bottom Belvedere flat top green casket. We can get those too. I think that it's important that I think it's really important that people understand that, uh, yeah, when you ask, because people ask me all the time, well, I just want a pine box. I'm like, that's great. The price of wood is really high. So we can get you cardboard and make it look good. And that's the truth. The truth is that there are value line caskets, and depending on where you're at in, um, what state you're in and what community you're in, and how much it costs to ship and so on and so forth, it
Gotcha.
is going to be a lot of different things. You can order a casket yourself uh, online. You can bring your own casket. You can make your own casket. You can bring it in. You can drop it off. You can bring your own alternative cremation container and bring it in. Um, we, we don't, you can do that. We have to accept those by law, um, but we're not going to guarantee them. So that, I think that's the biggest push too. And I think that also too, people have to understand, and this is what I didn't understand. Did you lose me? Oh, there we go. Um, People don't understand too that uh, a lot of times, well, first I want to clarify this. People always tell me, oh my gosh, you're a mortician and you're never going to be out of a job. You make so much money. It's great. I make less than a teacher. And I literally wade through blood and guts and everything. I do it because I love it, and I love it because I love people. Um, and so yes, some of our merchandise is more expensive because the truth is we can't pay for the overhead and the place to do what we do. Um, because we have to have an embalming room. I have to have a space where if somebody gets in a car wreck that I can make them better so mom can view. I have to have those spaces. So do we mark our merchandise up? Absolutely. So does everybody else, right? Um, but you can get a reasonable casket. You can get a cremation cloth covered casket for $8.95, but you won't get I'm sorry, is that answering your question? This is such a good question that
Well,
that
yeah,
you
yeah, it
asked.
is.
So
I've had some experience with some people in a personal care home, and they're basically indigent. And the man didn't have this brother who lived an hour away and never came to see the sister. They didn't have any money. Nobody had any money. They were living on Social Security. And, just you and I both know, and if y'all don't know, if you've had somebody pass, it costs a lot of money to move a body. And when my son passed in '08, it took I think it was $900 to go 10 miles in 2008. And we knew we were going to have cremation, but it was everything, the cremation and the newspaper stuff, and my son's still in a cardboard box back there. But I mean, we didn't do anything fancy, and it was $3,300 in 2008. And so I had that in my head, and now I'm trying to help these people, and the hospice nurses trying to help give ideas. And I know, absolutely know, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I'm going to run into more indigent people and people who cannot afford. And the only thing I know of for people that can't afford, and yet is a caveat in that, is donation, because they do pick up the body and they do bring you the ashes back to put in your urn or your necklace or whatever the heck. But that's something you got to do well, you don't do that after a person passes. So, and there's so many qualifications. Do they want the body? Do they have too many? Do you have something wrong with the body or a disease? So it feels to me like there's got to be something for what do we do in that situation? And that was one of the questions. That's a concern to me as to how I can help people. And I have been, I think Suzanne's told us, I've even said, you know, there are things and options that are $300. Well, 800 is not 300. And getting the body, I mean, getting a body, my mother-in-law's 97. And to move the body 3 miles from the personal care home to the funeral home was going to be $792.
so where do you live?
Outside, I'm metro suburban Atlanta.
Okay. So here, a memorable moment, another one is I had a gal call. I was running a different crematory and funeral home. I had a gal call and say, we can't find a funeral home um, that is inexpensive enough. And I said, okay. She goes, so I'm going to drive my brother. I said, that's great. Make sure hospice declares death, right? I mean, you can't do it if it's an unattended death. You have to have a declared death, right? And so she brought her brother in the back seat of her car. And I met her at the funeral home at 3 o'clock in the morning. She drove 4 hours. So I don't know about Georgia, but I know in the state of Idaho that you can bring the body to the funeral home. I transported my, why is that's sorry. I transported my father and my father-in-law. I've transported many loved ones in the back of our pickup truck in a combo unit, right? And so I would encourage, and also to here and probably in the county, if there's counties, you probably have indigent services. Um, that will help pay for cremation. It
Okay.
depends, like our counties here, we only pay for cremation, we won't pay for burial. So that's your option. They pay the funeral home, and some funeral homes will, some people won't take indigent. Um, I I do. I believe that it's something that that's important because there are folks that don't. There are other funeral homes, and I encourage you to look around at the different funeral homes um, and to say, do you offer a discounted cremation? Because the truth is that burial and indigent is so expensive that the funeral home and cemeteries can't eat the cost. They just can't. By the time they pay for a vault, by the time they pay the crew to dig the hole, by the time they pay for a casket, by the time they do that, it's difficult. So cremation on indigent services is the way to go. If if it is a religious issue, like Jewish or um, maybe
We have a
they're,
lot of
yeah, I don't know. Do you have
Hindu, Muslim. I got all that over
Muslim,
here.
Jewish, right? That they will come together as a community and pay for it. So,
Okay.
but indigent, it would be cremation, and I would check with the county if they have any indigent types of plans, and then I would just find the least expensive cremation, and then explain that to your person that this is would be the way to go. And remember, when you do least expensive cremation, that you will get the least expensive service. So it will be done all online. You're not going to be talking to somebody or meeting with somebody, so it will be very impersonal.
Well, that's good. That was one of the things. I got three more, y'all. Can you put your seatbelts on? I mean, I've been building up for this one big time. Um, the second one, I did go and I talked to the guy that I was talking about with my mother-in-law, and he said something, and I was asking, I was all brand new with this stool of stuff, and I was all excited about green burial. And I said something to him about Green Barrel, and you would have thought I cussed him out. He said, "Oh, no, that's terrible. And the only one we have is 35 minutes away. And if they've got loved ones that can't walk, you got to go into the woods and they just can't get there." And just on and on and on he went. And I'm like, gosh, if this is as popular. uh," And then I went to ask another one, and he didn't know anything about it. And then I heard somebody on some call say, yeah, that they had golf carts that they took them up, people on that they brought in golf carts from somewhere, and the people who couldn't walk, they carried them back over to the area. So I don't know if this is just a weirdo and he wanted my money, or which I didn't get any anyway, but I don't know if that was his deal, or is this typical?
I think that because it's so new, um, so change is hard, right? I mean, if you have a
Mhm.
very traditional, and I will say this, a traditional male counterpart, that is older male, ran the funeral home for 50 years. It's a family owned, this is the way it's going to be. And then yes. And if you're in that community, like my family's from Missouri and the Ozarks, right? That's the community that they're from. They're like, what? Well, I went to where my great grandparents were buried. I guarantee you that that's a green burial, because that cemetery been there for since the 1500s. I'm like, this is green burial because I guarantee you. Right? Um, so and what kind of green burial? So let's talk about that. Or do they require a casket? Because if they require a wicker casket or a moss casket or something like that, right? Then, or will they allow shroud and um, place without anything? I mean, so there's a lot of different, and we only have one um, that I know of in the state of Idaho that is really truly green burial. And then there is actually another one that is pretty loose on what they accept. So, which I'm really grateful for. It's a little bitty rundown cemetery. up by, Christine knows where this is. I think you know where it's at, Christine, up by Lizard Butte, the backside of it. Yeah. They dig a hole and that, okay, whatever you want. And that's okay. But yes, is it common? I don't know if it's generational. You know, I think we're moving back toward, I really see the shift, right? When funerals became commercialized, you have things like caskets, vaults, um, headstones, right? All those are merchandise. Just like a furniture store, the money that's made at the funeral home is through merchandise, right? And that's the way every business is. We're a service business, and so when I spend 16 hours on reconstruction, the funeral home's paying me for that. I can't meet with anybody else, right? I'm in there doing that part. And so and I'm working 50 or 60 hours a week, and most of the time I clock out and I'm still answering the phone or I'm taking phone calls on the weekends. Right? They don't pay me for that. So the answer is he's got to make his money somewhere, right? Whether that's in the casket or the vault or the marker or whatever. And so, but I think the other part of that is education and a closed-minded process of this is the way it should be traditionally, embalming, funeral, viewing, instead of, hey, you know what? We want to celebrate grandma. She wants to go down here and be buried in there, and we're going to have a barbecue, and great. Let's bring grandma to the barbecue. I mean, all of those things. I've done that, right? So it's fine. We'll do that. Let's bring grandma to the barbecue. And so I really see, but I see a shift happening in mortuary school. We're getting, I believe when I was at the women's conference, they said 70% of the mortuary students now are women. And we're starting to see a little bit of a shift of, it's not the black suit and tie anymore. And it's not just that traditional funeral. One, because it's really expensive. And I know my kids couldn't afford a traditional funeral. They couldn't do it. And so I think that's a lot of the shift too is, and things that are environmentally friendly and ashes to ashes. I mean, you know,
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And who
yes.
is the governing agency, or how would I find ones that, how would I have to call and say, hey, do you have the indigent thing? Or is there like a centralized title or a centralized office or anything like that?
Yeah, I would just Google and just say indigent services. Like
Okay.
I can Google indigent services Ada County or Idaho, and they'll pop up in the counties and you can call them. And it's
All
an
right.
application that they have to fill out. So
Well, I have in mind that I want aquamation. My aquamation, only place in the state of Georgia, is sitting on the Alabama line. And I was told that it would cost so much to carry my body over there to the state line that it would be unaffordable, I think was the way the man said. And I said, well, why is there just one? And he said, because it came through at the 11th hour. I said, what? He said, yeah, everybody had gone or gone to sleep or had a break, and it passed at 11:45 at night. And that's why. Of course, he wasn't too excited about it, but then he did want to tell me in the same breath, he turned around and he said, we're not doing a lot of embalming anymore. I said, what? He said, we're not doing a lot of embalming anymore. He said, since COVID, we can't get out with that. But since COVID, it's too hard. All these folks have blood clots, and we get in there to let the blood drain, and we can't get it out. And so what we've done is go to, instead of spending money, we bought all this new refrigeration. So we got new refrigerators, and these are great, and they're going to hold over for a week. So your people can wait 7 to 10 days and the body will be fine in our refrigeration. I was a little bit like, what now? This is a very hot topic, so I'm not going to really go down that road. There are
Okay.
many, 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 many casualties of COVID. I've experienced them firsthand and with more friends than I want to tell you. So it doesn't surprise me that that might be a real reality. But I wondered why the big deal and not tell anybody? Heck, I'd want to know. So is it true? Was he just trying to impress me? What was the deal?
Um, well, my experience might be different than his. So when we go to embalm somebody, I look at uh, first, what did they die of? Second, um, do they have a heart condition? Were they on chemotherapy? Did they have this? And there's certain chemicals and things that we can use and certain techniques that we can use to make a difference. And so um, I think that you have to have a funeral director or mortician that's willing to educate themselves um, on um, how to overcome difficulties, and they can be most of them can be overcome if you have an embalmer that's capable of doing it, and most of us are. It's just opening your mind to being educated on different things to do and to use. So, and a lot of times the truth of the matter is that as embalmers, and I can guarantee you that it's like this all over, is that we're taught one time or two times, and then we're given our tools and they say, okay, good luck, your turn now. I mean, it's and we don't learn a lot in school. We learn to pass the tests, and then it's just about educating ourselves to of new techniques and what to do and how to do it. And you have to be passionate about it. So, and let's hope he's got good refrigeration to start with. He could have a lot of problems. So let's hope that it was good to begin with. Okay. So,
Oh gosh.
I'm not planning to go there. He did the cremation for my son, but I was not impressed with my interview. So I am. It's not like we don't have a bunch of them. Oh my God, they're almost on every corner. So, I can do the interview process. And thank you ever so much for your help. That's been very
absolutely.
informative.
Mhm.
Thank you, Maggie. One of the things that I think about when I was a brand new nursing student, I had, this might be TMI, but like I had one opportunity to catheterize someone. And then, it's like you just hope for an opportunity to have these experiences. But really, I think for a lot of us that are in this type of work, it is really just kind of we're learning as we go, and if we're just taught one way, that might be just the way that we always do it. But there's always
Mhm.
opportunities for education and new techniques that are always coming out, and how we can really provide the best service possible. I did want, before I see your hand up, but there's a couple questions that have been kind of hanging out in the chat. I just wanted to just check in. Carl had said, if I plan my arrangements really far in the future, he's 41, how can I be sure that the funeral home will be around when I am at the average age for death? So what if the funeral home closes by chance and they've made arrangements with that funeral home? What would happen in that situation if perhaps,
Well,
we still live 30 more years?
absolutely. And it's actually a really great idea to do it younger. And um, eh, because if you if you do it with a guarantee that the funeral home will guarantee. Now, so you want to do it with I believe, and this is just my own thought, you want to do it with a third party. So like there's a few of them that are very reputable. National General, Great Western. Um, I think it's Global Life. It, and when you go to the funeral home, say, do you keep it in a trust or is there a third party holder, a life insurance holder? And if it were me, where it doesn't get mucky is that it's a life insurance holder. So maybe the beneficiary is, say, Allsip and Persons, but Allsip and Persons closes. You still have put that money in a safe spot. And then if that funeral home closes, you can use it at the other funeral home, or say you move from one state to another, you transfer it. So that's how you do it. And that's how most funeral homes do it now, because um actually we had one here, I think it was about 15 years ago, that held all the money. And so, and what ended up happening was they held the money and they spent the money, and then the money wasn't there, right? And so they went to prison, all of that, and a lot of laws changed because of that. And the local funeral homes took a lot of those cases on and said, we'll just take them and make sure that those people get what they signed up for, even though a lot of the funeral homes weren't going to get paid for them. Um, they split them. Most of the funeral homes did between them, but so that way you can keep it safe. And it's through, you know, especially Great Western, they're really good. Um, I've they're really good to a good spot to start doing that. And you can either do a final expense, or you can do um, a guaranteed through the funeral home. And that should be safe. That will be safe and transferable if you use if they go through a third-party insurance company.
Great. Thank you so much for that,
Mhm.
Jolie. That's a great
Sure.
question, Carl. Thank you so much. Althea has two questions. And so the first question is, what's been shifting in the way people grieve or gather since the pandemic? And then her second question is, what practices help you care for your own heart while doing this heavy but sacred work? Thank you, Althea, for those questions. So the first question, what's been shifting in the way people grieve or gather since the pandemic? And how do you care for your heart during doing this beautiful work?
So I think that the shift really, what I've seen anyway, is that more celebrations at home are happening,
Mm.
because everybody was, you know, mandated to stay home. So that's what happened. Everybody just met at home. Um, you know, we would do things like the funeral home that I was at before. We go, okay, well, we'll have a religious service, whether they were religious or not, and say amen, right? So we'd pray, and then people could gather, and we would call it a church service. So, I mean, we, you know, with precautions, because we were really seeing a big shift in um, child abuse cases and things like that, because people were so alone. So that's a really great question. So the shift has been a lot more celebrations at different spots other than a funeral home or a church. Um, and you know, I'm really glad at Allsips, because we support those things. Um, we encourage people to celebrate their loved ones how they would. And if that's a barbecue with a 12 pack of beer, or at a wine bar, or wherever that is, then we'll do it. Doesn't matter. I'm doing one, you know, at the winery on the slope this on Tuesday. And so that's okay. And that's the shift that I've seen. Um, and how do I take care of my heart? Boy, I think Christine and I have had this conversation, I think, more than once. This is a hard question. This is, don't start crying, Christine. Um, so I am very much an empath. I carry a lot of people's energy, right? And I want to make everybody okay. And I can't do that in my line of work, right? So I try to make it softer. Um, Sometimes I just have to go up to the mountains and make sure I don't have phone service, because I'll work because I'm afraid. Um, I try to surround myself with people that can listen to me talk about the things I need to talk to, that don't say, oh, don't talk to me about that. Because we have to, right? We have to. Um, I I feel like part of my job is to carry the images that other people can't carry, that I can carry that for them. And so I believe that God's given me the ability to do that. And so, especially if there's a tragedy that I had to tell, we had a plane crash, and I had to tell a family, I said, Dad was a homicide detective, and he said, Joe, I gotta see her because I see this kind of stuff all the time. It's my daughter. And I said, let me let me see her for you, and let me hold that, right? You hold the best picture that you can of her, and let me hold the bad one. And so I go to a lot of recovery meetings. I participate in women's groups. I love my husband fiercely. I have, honestly, I was talking to my husband about this the other day, is that I'm afraid. I, s- I- my biggest fear, because he travels all the time, I'm like, you better come home to me because I'm always afraid, right? Um, so, but my grandbabies heal my heart. I get to see them every weekend and they heal my heart. And I have a really heavy faith that I depend on. And for me, uh my higher power gets me through it because he's given me the gift to hold that for people and to hold the space for people to grieve and to he's given me the ability to help others to do that. And so I believe that he stands by me to help heal my heart when I need it. And sometimes I just have to walk away and shut the phone off. I do. I don't know if that answers your question, but sorry, now I'm crying. Oh,
Ah,
dang it.
sorry, this happens every time, Jolie, when
I
we
know.
get together.
Yeah.
People say, you know, people ask me, how can you do this work? And doesn't it make you sad? And for me personally, I think, how can you not? Because I think that when I'm working with people at the end of life, I feel like it's almost as if they're breathing life into me, and it's such life affirming work because none of us know what's tomorrow is going to bring. There was just a shooting in um at the Catholic school, and I think that every moment is precious, and none of us tomorrow is not guaranteed for any of us. And I wish that all of us could die a beautiful death in our sleep at a ripe old age of, whatever, but that's not the reality for some of us. Some of us have to leave this planet sooner than we would like. But I'm just so grateful that there are people like you that are able to take care of our loved ones at that final moment and be able to, I feel so comforted knowing that my loved ones will be cared for. And I hope that each one of us can feel assured that there are beautiful people taking care of our loved ones. Like Jolie. I just want to thank you, Jolie, so much. This was beautiful. This was just a beautiful conversation. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Karen, I saw that your hand was up. I don't want to
It's
not.
okay. I just, I don't even know if I could talk. I mean, that was just so beautiful. I just felt, um, I wish you could move to California and work here and be my funeral director. And because I just felt the sacredness that you treat who you're taking care of with that sacredness, because I believe that death is sacred. And it's a beautiful experience. I mean, I've been through so many of them. It's really a beautiful experience. But on a lighter note, I don't know if anybody has seen the video about the Coffin Club. Have you seen that? It's called the Coffin Club, and it over in another country. And this man could not afford to bury his wife. He couldn't do it. I don't know what the country was, but it was somewhere so I think Wales or someplace. So he was a
They do have.
carpenter. So he made her own
Mhm.
coffin, and it started the whole town making their own coffins. And it's a hilarious video that they put together. And the funeral director wasn't real happy about it, but then after a while, the funeral director just said, "Okay, let me join them, if this is what they're doing." And so they had like an Elvis Presley box, they had boxes. They painted them with kittens on them. They had all this stuff. So if you ever have a chance, look up the Coffin Club. Look for that video, because
I
I
will.
not to squash what you're doing, but I mean, I just
No.
thought it was hilarious, and that's the way to go out. That celebration. That let's decorate our own coffins. Some of them were coffee tables. They kept them as coffee tables in their house. So that's all I had. But thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks, Karen.
Mhm.
Thank you all so much. Maggie said, thank you so much for your authenticity and willingness to be vulnerable. My son's life celebration was in the middle of a farm. We had hay rides for all the children, a slideshow, white balloon release, shape of a horse for the kid that couldn't walk. We had his favorite foods, hot dogs, Cheetos, Oreos, and High C Punch. Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. Thank you,
I'm so
everybody.
glad. I'm
I
so
can't.
glad that you had that opportunity, because it should be that way every time. And there really should be able to talk to a funeral home and question them, and connect with the funeral home. And that's the one that you choose, is when you feel that connection.
One thing
I'm
that
sorry, I didn't mean to
really helped
interrupt you.
me,
I love it.
one thing that really helped that y'all need to know, and I hadn't thought about it until just now. My dad got we Nathan was in hospice for about 6 days, 5 days, 6 days. And my dad pulled us aside. My dad's a minister, and he pulled my husband at the time and me aside, and he said, "I really think you need to write the obituary." Now, this was on Friday before Thanksgiving. And he said, "I think you need to write it." And I was like, "Why, Daddy? I ain't gone yet." And Dad said, "I just think you need to write it." So the two of us wrote it. And sure enough, Nathan died at 1 o'clock, and we got actually died at 11:30, and then the guy came at 1. And had we not written it, we were able to meet at the funeral home. The deadline for the newspaper and everything was 4 o'clock, and I had it and I gave it to him, and it made that deadline so it could be in the paper on Saturday, and we had the celebration on Sunday, and we were able to have 150 people there because of that preparation. And I definitely want to pass that on, because I think that was really important. It was important to us, and I think it would be important to others if they're planning to have some kind of celebration.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Oh, this was just amazing, Jolie. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and we meet every month on the 27th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time. I know it's late for the East Coast folks, but I really appreciate everybody coming. We have speakers every month or just organic conversations. And I just wanted to share on October 27th is the creator of the Death Deck, Lisa Paul, and she will be here on October 27th. And thank you, Candy, for posting about the Coffin Club. I appreciate that so much. Jolie, I just can't thank you enough. I know your time is precious, and I can't thank you enough for sharing your evening with us. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next month. Thanks again.
Thanks, Christine.
Thank you so much.